This is Retire Hour.
Welcome into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape. I'm your host, Matt Goolsby, and holy cow, it seems like it's changing really fast. We'll get into the Social Security revelations that have been in the news this past week as far as how many people are having Social Security numbers and the 360-plus-year-old that has a Social Security number and what's going on there. And with Larry, actually, we'll continue that theme with Social Security because he'll share with us a story this week. And in his words, he had a client come in, a couple who needed to make a strategic choice on when to start their Social Security. But we want to cover again after this first break here. We'll be talking with Jonathan McCoy about all these revelations that have happened with just Elon Musk exposing how many people have Social Security numbers, 60 plus million more than there are even citizens of the United States. So there's something going on there, and we'll dig into that with Jonathan McCoy after the break. But again, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape of retirement. I'm your host, Matt Goolsby, and you can go to our website at retirehour.com and submit listener questions. But my favorite way to get listener questions is going out to these home shows that we do here in Wichita and Kansas City, where we go to the home show and we give out swag, whether it's the hats, the coffee mugs, the umbrellas, whatever the thank you is. But when you're at those home shows, you can leave a question. And this week's listener question comes from Bob, actually in Wichita, Kansas. And his question's a good one. I hear it a lot. Conventional wisdom tells you to downsize in retirement, but it didn't save me any money. Is there a better way? And again, thanks for that question, Bob. I hope you picked out a gift there at the table from whoever was working that day. I didn't get to say hi to you. But Bob, to Bob's point, this is a common theme we will hear from a lot of people. Well, I plan to sell my 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom home and downsize into, a 2 or 3 bedroom. Oftentimes downsizing, because of what's happened with inflation, a lot of people really don't get to use that strategy as maybe as successful or as effective as it used to be. And is there a better way, to Bob's question there? Move in with your kids? No, that's a bad joke, but I'm really big about budgeting. If you can't budget what's going on in your household, and if you can't project a new budget for if you're to sell that old house and try and downsize and put the numbers together before just jumping out of the frying pan into the fire, so to speak, I would encourage you, Bob, to budget before you make those decisions. And that's a big thing that we promote. Working together as this complete retirement team is taking a look at things before you make those decisions, before you make those big changes in your life, especially during retirement. You need to make sure you're getting all those facts, looking at everything in every possible way you can. And so often that doesn't happen because if you're working with the financial advisor, there's tax consequences. There's maybe even healthcare impacts if you move. And there's so many things that you just don't know until, like with Bob, when you try and sell your home and downsize thinking you're going to save money, it doesn't typically work that way, again, because of inflation. So my advice to you, Bob, is to before you make those big decisions, make sure you're getting advice in all the areas before you just go sell your house and decide to downsize. Because if you're not budgeting, if you're not looking at this in every possible way you need to, I've seen this over the past 20 years of my career. Oftentimes, and there are some exceptions, I will give you that. Oftentimes, if you're trying to downsize, it doesn't quite save you the savings that a lot of people think they're going to have, unless you have a house in California and you downsize and move to the middle of nowhere, Kansas. That's gonna be a little bit of a different scenario. But oftentimes, if you're trying to downsize from that big home, normally the only savings you really materialize is the maintenance on that larger home, and that doesn't normally make up enough to do that big jump. So great question from Bob. And if you've got questions for this complete retirement team, you can go to our website at retirehour.com and submit those questions, or you can go to our main website, marketadvisorygroup.com. Or better yet, maybe you have questions that you don't know how to get answers to, and you're thinking, man, I just need someone that can really just bounce some things off of and get a different perspective. you can reach out and schedule a 15-minute call with us to do that. The number is 833-MAG-REPORT. Again, that toll-free number is 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report. We'd love to have a 15-minute conversation with you just to make sure you're looking at all the potential variables and all the ramifications that can happen from these decisions that you make in retirement, and you don't want to be surprised like it sounds like maybe Bob was there. Well, stay tuned. We're going to go up to Kansas City, and we're going to talk with Jonathan McCoy about all this Social Security buzz of Elon Musk trying to expose all these people that are on Social Security that maybe are either alive or maybe there's something else going on there. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape that is retirement. And we don't know all the changes that'll be happening to retirement, but it's pretty clear there's going to be some big changes coming either in this next year or maybe even next year. And one of the ones I want to dig into here is what's going on with Elon Musk digging into Social Security. And I'm going to go up to Jonathan McCoy in Kansas City. Jonathan, I'm sure you saw the Twitter post on Twitter, or excuse me, X, and I'm sure you saw some of this stuff in the news where
how can I miss it?
It looks like there's someone, 360 years old collecting Social Security, and that's not really what that spreadsheet or that list was. That list that Elon released, that's people with active Social Security numbers. That doesn't mean they're collecting Social Security. But it was really interesting because there's like 330 million Americans and there was 390 million Social Security numbers out there. So something's a little out of whack here, right?
Yeah, and when you look at an institution as large as the federal government and the Social Security Administration, there's inevitably going to be inaccuracies in their record. These is huge, hundreds of millions of pieces of data in a database like Social Security holds. And I think this is, potentially the tip of the iceberg in terms of especially how this new administration maybe believes some of these federal programs can or should be run. And, one of the biggest concerns that we've heard from folks, over the last several months, even going back prior to the election, is this proposal that, if they eliminate the taxes on Social Security, is Social Security going to be able to survive? And we're going to be talking about that in a lot of our programs here coming up over the next several weeks. But this base understanding that there are people that are 150 years or older that either have Social Security numbers or are still active in the Social Security database, it's maybe an inkling or a clue into the fact that there probably are some inefficiencies and inaccuracies in the record at the federal government level, especially in the Social Security Administration. And it brings to light ultimately the fact that, a lot of the internal auditing processes that a lot of corporations and things try to go through to make sure that they're running efficiently, maybe some of those things have not necessarily been swept under the rug. We don't say that, but maybe there need to be additional resources added to make sure that these databases are kept up to date, to make sure that there aren't taxpayer dollars just flying out the window that even the federal government may not even be aware of.
Yeah, and that's true. And one of the things that, I think there's a lot of people that saw this spreadsheet that Elon Musk released, and I'm not trying to say it was bad. I thought it was very, very stimulating. It just got me thinking, it's like, can't be 10 million plus people that are over the age of 120 years old that are still alive. And you start looking at how maybe loose this has been ran. It's starting to click with me here that I think the big picture is to try and eliminate the tax on Social Security benefits while you're collecting in retirement. I think they're trying to find fraud, abuse, and waste to justify that. We're going to bring in Joshua Sikora later at the end of the show. You won't want to miss that. He'll be talking about how that tax on your Social Security benefits actually applies and goes towards funding Social Security. And if they eliminate it, they're going to have to figure out how they're going to make up an $85 billion shortfall between the Social Security benefits that are going in, or Social Security tax revenue that's going in, and the Medicare benefits that are going in. Comes around in 2023, it was $85 billion in taxes were collected on that. But if you have 10 million people that are over 120 years old collecting $1,000 a month in Social Security benefits, that's $12 billion a year. They're probably not going to be able to find fraud, waste, and abuse to the tune of $85 billion a year, at least in the Social Security program. Maybe they can. I don't know. It's starting to look to me that, again, with this big plan they're doing, they're trying to find ways to save so they can cut taxes and help the economy. And I love that. And you and I have long talked about, either in our classes that we do in person, this Social Security tax. It's a really double tax on the middle class. I mean, if you're absolutely destitute and you don't have much of any income, and in fact, just say if Social Security is your only income, you're probably not being taxed on that. But if you have a lot of money, okay, you're being taxed on your Social Security, that's fine. But it's the people that fall, like, for single people that fall around $60,000, and think married couples that fall around $80,000 to $90,000 a year in income, they're getting double taxed with this current Social Security tax system. So it excites me that they're going to be trying to change that, or maybe even get rid of it altogether. But when I start looking at the math and then looking through these things here, I don't know that they're going to be able to get all these cuts, or they're going to be able to pay for these tax cuts with just fraud, waste, and abuse alone. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And you and I talk all the time, just in, being business owners. And even in the first segment, you talked with, about Bob's question on how do you manage a budget? Well, first you have to have the numbers to be able to track. And I think this is just the beginning. And we use the cliche, the tip of the iceberg, in terms of understanding what that data is. Because if you don't have it, there's no way to manage it. And there's no way to make decisions and policy and all of these other things and find where the potential savings might actually be. And, for a lot of people, it can be a little bit fear inducing, because they're sort of looking under the hood of these federal programs that, I've read articles about, is this going to break systems? Is this going to break the Treasury? Or is our information going to be compromised? And all those are legitimate concerns. Ultimately, to your point, we have to look at what are the sustainable changes to make sure that these Social Security benefits that we've all paid into our entire working careers, at least, are actually going to be there when people of you and I's age decide to retire. And, it's already been a concern of the current retiring generation, the baby boomers, for decades, that is this program actually sustainable? Well, it's only going to be sustainable, especially in the face of these potential significant tax cuts, which for the next 10, 20 years might help a lot of our clients and the folks that we talk to in terms of the retirees and pre-retirees. But what about beyond that? Is this system going to be able to maintain its own finances? And I think the lack of tracking of how the system is actually working on a baseline level, all these millions of found Social Security numbers that nobody probably even recognized existed. I think it's just the beginning of the process to understanding how to make that system more efficient.
Well, and let's go back to this X post that Elon posted out there, and this spreadsheet, or this Social Security database. It's got age ranges from 0 to 369. If you look at how many people are on here, it's 390 million plus. Okay, there's only 334 million Americans in America. When I first saw this list, I thought to myself, that's got to be typos or something. Dug into it further and found out they're using an old code program at the Social Security Administration. And if there's anything missing in your date of birth, because I've read somewhere that someone doesn't sometimes know their date of birth. I've not ran into anyone that's not known their date of birth. But anyways, if your date of birth is missing, the system automatically defaults to your birthday is May, I think, 1875. So that means 150 years old plus. And that's why there's 1.3 million in that age range on this data sheet here of people between the ages of 150 years old and 159 years old. And if you kind of tabulate up just how many people on this list are over the age of 120, that's where I was saying here earlier, it's like almost 10 million plus people. And even if those people are all receiving, like I said, $1,000 on average a month, that's $12 billion a year. We're not going to be able to get there just in cuts alone. But as a business owner, you were talking about this earlier, it just startled me that you have 10 million people that you might not know their date of birth. Yeah. Are you really paying them Social Security if you don't know their date of birth? I mean, if you can't even get their basic date of birth down, how are you even making sure they're paying the taxes they should pay on it if they're Methuselah and still alive?
Right. And to your point, this 10, 15 billion, this is all just hypothetical math that you and I have been talking about this week since a lot of these articles and sort of revelations came out. It's still not enough savings to offset those lost tax dollars from the retirees. And that tax revenue is going to be shifted somewhere, whether that's to corporations, to individuals in the working class, maybe potentially raising the FICA payroll tax that people that are still working are paying into the system. they're going to have to find somewhere to realize that funding. And we hear all the time of tariffs and can that generate more federal revenue from other countries? I mean, there's a lot of spaghetti being thrown at the wall, I think, and some of that spaghetti will stick. And ultimately, a lot of these new rules and regulations, taxation laws, and things that are going to be coming out over the next 3 to 10 years, really, ultimately, it's going to be a test for how a lot of these things work. But at least it's a bit of a start in terms of understanding the inaccuracies and inefficiencies of how some of these, like you said, coding programs. It's not even necessarily human beings, but having a little clearer view of what these systems are actually doing and the information that's being used to help determine how much of a benefit are you actually going to receive, who's receiving those benefits. I think if the number I read was right, the 2020 census stated that there was about 80,000 people in the United States over the age of 100, let alone 120. So we know that these numbers are wrong. It's just a matter of how does that impact the system and how much potential savings is actually there. Because like I said, all of these millions of Social Security numbers may not be receiving the actual Social Security payments. That's probably going to be the next step of discovery that they go through when looking at these systems.
And you know what? I think it's worth a look just to make sure the money's going where it should be going. Need an answer real quick on this. Obviously, I think probably the only thing we could say for certain right now is changes are going to be coming. But if the tax changes are coming, how does someone that's in retirement make sure they're maximizing those tax changes for their situation?
Well, ultimately, especially if you're working with a financial advisor and you're already retired, you need to understand how, potentially this additional net income is not just affecting your budget, but how does that affect the taxation on the rest of your income sources, your pensions, your IRAs, your 401ks, and all of the, annuity payouts and things like that. If you're not working alongside a tax professional to give your financial advisor advice, at least in the meantime, to have a game plan in place in terms of how might this impact your tax management strategy long term over your retirement, you're probably going to miss out on some potential even more significant tax savings outside of just maybe the hundreds of dollars a month that may be showing up in your bank account. It gets back to that budgeting. It gets back to that holistic financial planning and making sure you're working with a team.
Wow, that was a quick answer. Okay. So if you're thinking out to yourself out there, if you're listening or watching the show, how am I going to know how these potential changes with either Social Security or the taxes on Social Security, how am I going to be sure that I'm maximizing that for my situation? If you're not working with a tax advisor and a financial advisor together, reach out and give us a call at 833-MAG-REPORT. That number again is 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report. We'd love to have a 15-minute call with you just from the convenience of your home. I've talked to people at their job. I've talked to people while they're traveling out of state. We want to make sure you're getting the answers you need so you don't have any of these unexpected, unpleasant surprises, kind of like Bob did when he tried to downsize, but it didn't really save him any money. Well, we're going to stay on this topic with Social Security. Right after the break, we'll be talking with Larry Clefcorn and a unique story there on this couple that made a strategic choice on when to start their Social Security. Stay tuned. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape of retirement. You hear me giggle there. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of things changing here soon, and it's going to be changing rapidly. And if you're not working with this team, ask yourself, how are you going to know that you're maximizing these changes for your benefit? We've got Larry Clefcorn here, an advisor with Market Advisory Group Wichita, and you and I were talking here at the break. This client you've been working with, they had I don't know to call it unique. It was a strategic choice, I think is the word you used. That's a good way to say that. There was thought behind it. They'd walked around the numbers, and that's what you really need to do. You can't just jump off a cliff and hope you can build an airplane on the way down. It doesn't really work that way. But tell us about what was going on with this couple.
Well, they were in a situation where they did have ample retirement funds. And so I say that because that's one of the factors that you would include in deciding when to start your Social Security, or at least you could consider that. But there were other considerations that they had, and they wanted the more they thought about it, and we have a program that we'll run through with them, and I had done that, and that created a great deal of discussion. And so inevitably, one of the things that comes up in this conversation is make sure that this is going to fit in. I mean, you're going to take Social Security. Most people are astounded that if it's a household of two people, husband and wife, it's very likely that they're going to take out together up to $1.5 million.
Yeah, depending on how long they live.
That's not uncommon.
I mean, if you're living to 360 years old collecting Social Security, you're going to take out a lot more than $1 million.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, that's from
in this case, they were projecting to age 85, and
that's a reasonable age to look at. But yeah, that is a big impact on someone's.
And that's why Social Security's in trouble. Okay,
one of the reasons.
Exactly, one of the reasons. And then the other factor here is that these particular people, they wanted to make sure that for the longevity purposes, they weren't going to be satisfied unless they were at these certain levels, and
certain levels of income or certain levels in Social Security benefits.
Certain levels of Social Security benefits for the rest of their lives, because that's going to be your start point for the rest of your life.
The foundation for your retirement.
The only thing that's going to change is COLAs each year.
Cost of livings, yeah.
Yeah.
And probably the taxes sounds like they're going to be changing, so, right?
Yes, and they have no control over that.
They don't, but they need to make sure they're knowing what those are at before they trigger that. And I'm sure when you were having these conversations, you had the talk about the tax implications on the Social Security.
We did.
Got in the tax guy and talked about that.
Yeah, and whenever I bring that up, we bring in a tax advisor for that piece of the conversation.
And that tax advisor, to me, is really an important variable, because if you're just talking with your financial advisor, they're going to give you, oh yeah, you take it at 65, you get this amount. You take it at full retirement age, 67, you get this amount. You wait till 70, you're going to get this amount. All great things to know, but if you don't have the tax component there, you're not really viewing the full picture.
That's true. That has to be part of the conversation. So you better be working with someone who has it right on hand.
I think you said it so well there. And if you're listening to this, or if maybe you're watching the show and you're thinking, yeah, it would probably be very important to know what the tax implications are to starting my Social Security. And if you're not having someone that can help you with that, again, reach out and schedule a 15-minute call at 833-MAG-REPORT. Or that phone number again is 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report. We'd love to have a 15-minute conversation with you, just to maybe uncover any unknown variables that you aren't aware of, or maybe just get better clarity of what's going on in your situation. Because that's what we find is so many people are frustrated they can't get all the answers in one place. Well, stay tuned. We'll be back with Corey Hebert with Market Medicare Advisors, and he'll be talking about how someone is their financial advisor and they're doing their Medicare. Stay tuned. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape of retirement. And it's changing pretty quickly around here. The media can't even keep up with all the things that are happening in D.C. that could have a potential impact on you and your retirement. But I want to go to Corey Hebert here, one of our Medicare advisors, healthcare advisors, because you don't just deal with Medicare, you also do health insurance as well. Do you have a story with this? Because this is kind of interesting. I do hear sometimes people that get their Medicare advice or their healthcare advice from their financial advisor. And my mom always said, jack of all trades, master of none. There's a lot to know about the Medicare sphere, and there's a lot to know about the financial advisor sphere. And if someone's trying to really stay on top of both of those, they have probably no personal life. They don't have a lot of free time, because this stuff changes from one administration to another. We've already seen changes at CMS, how they aren't asking certain questions that the previous administration wanted to be asked. We're seeing already that change there. I expect some other changes to happen to Medicare, but Why would you want to go to someone else besides your financial advisor for your Medicare advice?
Yeah, well, Matt, I want to, real quick to start this, you asked if I had a couple stories. The very first one that I'll ask is, or tell, I had a gentleman in my office the other day, and as we're talking and getting him set up with Medicare, it ended up being cheaper than his employer's insurance. He asked me the big question. Well, if I can get my health insurance less expensive through Medicare, really, how long do I need to keep working? Like, he bless his heart, he had everything on his sleeve. He said, I have this much in this account, I have this much in the other, my house is this far paid off. Do you think I'm okay to retire? And I kind of sat back in my chair and I said, listen, you want to know anything else about Medicare? I'm your guy. I am more than happy to answer those questions. But I'm smart enough to know that I don't know whether or not you're in a position to retire.
You're smarter than you look, is what you're saying.
But that's one of the benefits that I explained to him. I say, listen, although that may not be a question for me, you're asking all of the right questions that we expect someone turning 65 to ask. But I have a gentleman right down the hallway that, I wake up in the middle of the night talking about Medicare because it's all that's on my mind. All that Jonathan talks about is retirement and making sure that you're able to accomplish your goals. And I'm sure, not from personal experience, but you're running into the same types of situations within your conference room of people starting to ask you Medicare questions where you have to...
I drag one of your team members in and say, hey, you ask them the question, because I might know things from hearing you talk about it, but maybe I heard something from 3 or 4 years ago that you talked about, and it's incredibly different today, and it's going to change even probably more.
Yeah, and that really, from a financial advisor perspective, that puts you or other financial advisors in a really dangerous position. Because I met with a gal 2 weeks ago who came in, and by the time she had came in, she started working with one of our financial advisors. That's how she got introduced to us. But she had been previously working with a different financial advisor who had recently set her up with Medicare.
Why do I worry about what's going on here? Is there?
It's happy ending.
Okay, well, that's
sorry to spoil all that.
That's good.
But she comes in with a Medicare supplement, and she comes in with a good, solid brand name Medicare supplement that whenever you look at it from the surface, you go, oh, well, that's somebody that my parents dealt with, or that's somebody that I've heard their name before. And then when my financial advisor brought them up, I knew the name, and they sounded like they knew what they were talking about. So I just made that same decision there. When in all actuality, she didn't have a choice when it came to her Medicare product. Her financial advisor had found one little box that had worked for his clients in the past. 3 or 4 years.
So he was putting everyone in the same plan?
It was the same exact plan. And not only that, Matt, as you do know, whenever I talk about a Medicare supplement plan G, every single plan G is identical coverage. Well, he'd been using the same exact company to write his plan Gs going on 4 or 5 years. And then from a price standpoint, she was paying probably $40, $50 a month more than she needed to for the same exact coverage. Now
but I can see how that happened. The financial advisor is trying to wear two hats, and that's a risky game. And the financial advisor trying to help with the investments and the Medicare. Jack of all trades, master of none. I mean, you're going to drop the ball somewhere. And if she's overpaying for this healthcare coverage, you'd think a financial advisor that's trying to help you manage your money wouldn't want you overpaying on your Medicare coverage, spending more money than you need to, maybe even hurting yourself in retirement.
Right. And with all of that, the tough part here is that the financial advisor in this situation truly believes, I like to believe that they truly believe, that they're doing the right thing by the client.
Oh, yeah.
And they feel like they understand everything about Medicare because I went to this one seminar 2-3 years ago, whatever it may be. So it's not a shady sales pitch that they're giving when they talk about the Medicare supplement. It's good intentions. It's just not the most up-to-date or current information.
Well, and even as things change, and that's been a big theme of this week's show is how the new administration is very keen and very aggressively moving towards timeline-wise, making changes and trying to find fraud, waste, and abuse to help that lower maybe the taxes. If this stuff changes on a regular basis, how does one person really stay current on the changes that can happen in Medicare every year and the changes that can happen in the financial advisory world?
Right. It's darn near impossible. And it goes along with something that we tell most clients that come into our office is that, hey, we like to fall in love with good coverage. We don't like to fall in love with an insurance company or an insurance carrier, because these changes happen on such a regular occurrence that if you just go with that insurance carrier name that you like, you could find yourself in trouble.
You know what I'm kind of picking up from this story, this exchange that you're telling us about this week? It sounds like maybe the financial advisor was kind of phoning it in, or maybe the financial advisor was just sticking with one company for simplicity's sake for that financial advisor standpoint, but it really wasn't in the individual that they were trying to help their best interest.
Right. I mean, the financial advisor found himself one thing that worked one time and said, we're going to rubber stamp this, we're going to repeat this, and we're going to send it out to every single one of our clients.
You know, I have a younger sister. I don't think I've ever mentioned that on this show. I have a younger sister about 4 years younger than me. We have the same parents, but our thumbprints, our healthcare needs, our scenarios are very different. And what I'm trying to get at is cookie cutter things don't really work for people because everyone is unique, or everyone that I've met is certainly unique, but you need to make sure you're having someone that can speak to that unique situation that's going on in your circumstances. And if you guys don't have that, reach out right now and schedule a 15-minute call with us. We'd love to chat with you by phone at 833-MAG-REPORT. That's 833, the letters MAG stands for Market Advisory Group Report. Or you can go to our website at retirehour.com or marketadvisorygroup.com. We'd love to chat with you by phone or come into our office if you need to. But just want to make sure you're getting the answers to what's going on in your situation so you don't have these unexpected surprises that we find so often that happen out there. Well, stay tuned. We'll be right back with one of our estate planning attorneys, Alex, talking about what a living will is. I think that's a little different from a will. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss this. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on this ever-changing landscape in retirement. And again, I've mentioned it before. I'll say it again. There's going to be a lot of changes that are coming down this year. And if you're not familiar with how it could impact your situation, what could it be costing you? How do you know if any of these changes will impact you in a positive or negative way? And then how would you even know if you can maximize these changes to your situation if and when they actually do change? Because it's going to be changing. But this week we've got Alex in here, one of our estate planning attorneys from Edelman Law Firm. Living wills, that's different than a regular will.
That's correct. Yeah. So I don't know who decided to name these and make it as confusing as possible. But
attorneys.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But a living will is the document that says, hey, if I'm going to be on life support and I don't have quality of life, I don't want that.
So that's different than the will, which is written instructions to the probate court on how to distribute your stuff.
Correct.
The living will is your healthcare options on, do you want to be on a feeding tube? Do you want to be on a respirator? Things like that?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And they're such an important part of your estate plan because they help protect your personal dignity. They allow you to say, hey, here are the choices that I want to make, and if I can't make them in that moment, I want someone else to step up and make them.
So this is something you want in place. So take my scenario, for example. I'm single. I'm engaged, but I'm not married yet. And I have no kids. But if something happened to me and I went into the hospital and I was on a feeding tube or a respirator, think back 20, 25 years ago, Terry Schiavo.
Right.
She didn't have one. And there was all that went all the way to the Supreme Court. But again, if I'm there, will the doctors probably look at my parents to say what would they be doing, or who would be making those choices for me if I'm not married, no kids, my parents are still alive, and I didn't have a living will? What would happen there?
Well, it would depend on if you have healthcare documents at all. If you don't, then yeah, I mean, they're going to talk to parents, or they might decide, hey, we don't have anyone that's legally allowed to make decisions on your behalf. So they're going to do, I call it, doctors are going to do what doctors do, which is they want to save lives.
Sure.
And maybe that's not what you want in your situation. You know, the other part of it is it protects your finances. A stay in the ICU costs thousands of dollars. And if you have a long-term condition where you don't have any quality of life, but they're keeping you alive for months and months, you know, that can be a significant chunk of your estate gone because you're being taken care of, and that's not really what you wanted.
And if you're a vegetable, what's the point, really? I mean, I hate to be that brass with it, or that crass with it.
Yeah, I mean, there are uncomfortable conversations that you need to have with your significant other. And like you're talking about, people have different situations. We see so many blended families. And this is such an essential document in those situations, because you have a new spouse, you know, who may be there for a year, or they might be there for 20 years. And then you have your children, and you could have told both of them, hey, I don't want to be on a ventilator. I don't want to be on these things. And your spouse is like, understood, I got it. I'll help you with that. And your children might say, hey, the doctor said there's a 2% chance. We're not going to give up on mom or dad. And now you have two people that love you, and they're coming at it from such diametrically opposed positions, it can cause friction between them. That living will is there to say, this is actually what I want, and whoever's making that decision is doing what I want. They're not just doing it on their own.
Well, and you mentioned the term blended families. Sometimes I don't know that people know what that means, but a blended family is kind of what I've got going on in my situation. My parents divorced. They both remarried. That makes a blended family. But again, if I'm not married and I don't have these in children, the doctors probably might try and look at my parents, and you know, if my parents could agree on anything, they probably wouldn't have got divorced. So, you know,
Right.
This is an important document to have if you want to make sure you're not like Terry Schiavo and your loved ones are having to go to the Supreme Court to fight over should they pull the plug or not.
Right. And it's such a terrible thing to be fighting over. You know, no one wants to be having that argument, and no one wants to be spending their money on that. And so this document, it allows for those tough conversations to say, no, this is what mom wanted. All I'm doing is trying to, you know, respect her wishes and do the things that she would want done. And I think that makes it a lot easier for the kids to understand in the end.
I think that's well said. And, you know, guys, if you're listening out there and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I've got a will, but I don't know that I have an advanced healthcare directive or a living will, or you need to have someone think about all these, or talk with you and discuss all these things that could be happening in your situation. And if you don't have someone that you can rely on or as a resource, or reach out to us and schedule a 15-minute phone call at 833-MAG-REPORT. Or that phone number again is 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report. Or you can hop on over to the website at retirehour.com. You want to make sure you have these things in place, the right documents in place, to make sure you don't have a lot of discourse in your family. Worse yet, have to have your family incur the expenses of going to the Supreme Court if they want to take you off that machine. Well, stay tuned. We'll be right back with Joshua Sikora talking again about these Social Security, elimination of these taxes on these Social Security benefits, and what shortfall, what impact that could have on Social Security. You won't want to miss that. Stay tuned. Welcome back into Retire Hour. You know, there's been a lot of news about Social Security and people collecting Social Security, or these people that are 360 years old, and, you know, 10 million people that are over 120 million years old. I wanted to dovetail that into one of our tax advisors here, Joshua Sikora, your CPA. You know how a lot of this stuff functions, and I don't know how you have the brain capacity to do that, but this Social Security tax that President Trump wants to eliminate, I that got me really excited, because you and I see that catch a lot of people in these tax traps where they get double taxed.
Yep.
But if you have maybe fraud, waste, and abuse to the tune of 10 billion to 20 or 10 to 12 billion dollars a year from either people that are so old collecting Social Security, or that maybe they're not really alive, still trying to figure out what all this data that they're finding is really talking about. But if you have 10 to 12 billion dollars a year in savings you could find there, that's great. But that will not make up for the $85 billion shortfall of eliminating the tax on Social Security benefits, right?
Right. So it would be very helpful to our senior citizens if the federal tax on Social Security benefits got eliminated.
I agree.
That tax has only been around for about 40 years or so. So for most of Social Security's existence, it was a tax-free benefit. The taxes didn't start until the trust fund was facing a shortfall. There wasn't enough going into the fund.
That was back in the 80s when Reagan was president, Tip O'Neill was Speaker of the House.
That's right. And they worked together and started taxing everybody's Social Security benefits. Bipartisan cooperation.
Not everybody. It's a formula, right?
It is a formula. And so if all you're getting in retirement is Social Security, then it's probably not being taxed. However, as you have different income components coming in, maybe it's cash you're getting from retirement accounts or pensions, then it's going to make more of your benefit taxable. If it could be income you're not receiving as cash, maybe it's dividends that get reinvested in a brokerage account.
Yeah.
You're not getting the cash, but you're having to deal with tax consequences.
And maybe, like you said, you're not getting that cash. You're not taking that withdrawal of the account, but it is having an impact, sometimes a pretty substantial impact on someone's Social Security. We're going to talk on the TV show this week about how someone just made an extra $1,000 of income from just a CD at the bank, and that $1,000 of extra income from just interest income costs them 40% in taxes because of this Social Security formula. And again, I'm excited that they're going to eliminate it, or they're talking about eliminating it, but the math is a different story.
The math is worrisome because, like you said, if we eliminate that tax, that's going to cost $85 billion.
Billion with a B.
Billion with a B.
Billions.
That's right. Too bad you don't have a chair to turn around in dramatically. But then that money's got to come from somewhere, because the taxes that people pay on their Social Security benefit in retirement goes and replenishes the trust fund. So if that stops happening, the trust fund is not going to be depleted or face a shortfall in 2034. It's going to be 2032.
So if they were to eliminate the tax on Social Security, that tax that people pay on their Social Security in retirement, those dollars actually go back in and fund Social Security.
That's right. Replenish it. Exactly so. And so then that was the whole reason they initiated the tax in the first place, was to stave off that shortfall.
Right, because Social Security was running out of money the first time in the 80s. A lot of people have forgotten that.
Yeah. And then again in the 90s, and that's kind of what added some of the complication to how it all works. So if they take that out, they've got to make up for it somewhere else, because for so many people, Social Security benefits is the cornerstone of their retirement.
And for a percentage of the population, it's their only retirement.
That's right.
And, it would be a big benefit. I think you and I have talked about some numbers before. Single people, it seems like if they're around $60,000 in income between their Social Security and other income sources, that's where if they're single, they're going to fall into that really severe double tax trap. You don't have to be someone... You don't have to be Elon Musk making all the money that he makes every year, or even President Trump. This is really a tax that impacts middle America.
That's right.
And they don't know what's going on, unfortunately, because they don't get tax advice with their investments a lot of times.
Which is silly. Just silly.
Dude.
But then the concern becomes, okay, they've got to keep the fund afloat. What are they going to do to replenish it and make up that $85 billion? They're going to cut back on some of this, people collecting from relatives who are deceased. I don't know how effective that's going to be. Even in a best case scenario, we're talking in the $10 to $20 billion range, not 85.
Exactly.
To kind of go contrary to what old President Bush said, there's going to be new taxes in play. They're going to have to do something. And it's a little scary how that might turn out.
So, if they, I would say it's a safe, educated guess to say some kind of taxes with Social Security will be changing.
Absolutely. I think it's a safe bet.
And if people aren't understanding how that impacts them either before it happens or while it happens, This is a classic example where if they're not getting tax advice, we see it cost them a lot of money.
That's right. And then, when we see it hurt people, it's when it's already happened. And so we can't unwind it. We might be able to fix it going forward, but once it's played out, that pain has happened.
And then Larry was mentioned earlier, he had a client in that wanted to know when to take their Social Security, dragged you guys in to figure out what the tax consequences there. Mm-hmm. So often the tax consequence is an afterthought, and it really needs to be while you're making your decision.
That's right.
And if you don't have that tax advice, guys, ask yourself, are you frustrated that you don't? Or are you worried that you don't? And if you want to make sure that you're getting your situation covered, reach out and schedule a phone call with us at 833-MAG-REPORT. Or that phone number again is 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report. Or you can hop on over to our website at retirehour.com. Just schedule that 15-minute phone call. I am so worried that so many people out there are having so unnecessary hits to them. Well, that's all the time we have this week. We'll see you next week.
Unless otherwise indicated, all client names have been changed to protect their identities. Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The content provided is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific investment opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns are not indicative of future results. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in the states where it is registered or excluded or exempt from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by security regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. No legal or tax advice is provided. Always consult with a tax professional. Legal services are offered by Edelman Law Firm. Tax services offered by Market Tax Services. Market Advisory Group does not provide legal or tax advice. Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not in any way refer to investment advisory products. Rates and guarantees provided by insurance products and annuities are subject to the financial strength of the issuing insurance company, not guaranteed by any bank or the FDIC. The guest commentators featured in this show are not investment advisor representatives of Foundations and do not provide advisory services. Market Advisory Group does have several investment advisor representatives that can provide such services. This is not endorsed or affiliated with any U.S. government agency, the Social Security Administration, or associated with any federal Medicare program. We do not offer every plan available in your area. Any information we provide is limited to those plans we do offer in your area. Please contact Medicare.gov or 1-800-Medicare to get information on all of your options. A Roth conversion may not be suitable for your situation. The primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. The information provided is to help you determine whether or not a Roth IRA conversion may be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Please review your retirement savings, tax, and legacy planning strategies with your legal/tax advisor to be sure a Roth IRA conversion fits into your planning strategies. All rights reserved.